Your view, our vision. The Gauteng Provincial Legislature is a democratic institution ready to discharge its key role in social transformation by encouraging public participation in its core activities, thus obtaining the views of the electorate and ultimately converting these visions into reality. The Johannesburg City Hall, one of the city's best-known landmarks, has witnessed over 100 years of South Africa's social and political history. If only walls could speak, these would surely have many stories to tell. It is 1903 and the Johannesburg City Council passed a resolution to build a city hall in the finest European tradition. They chose a piece of land on Market Square in the heart of the city. It took another 12 years before the Johannesburg City Hall was completed and cost Johannesburg taxpayers over £400,000. The Governor-General of South Africa, Lord Buxton, officially opened the City Hall on the 7th of April 1915. Although the inside of the City Hall would be largely off limits to black people until the 1990s, outside on the City Hall steps, there was always something happening. Anti-German demonstrations during World War I, Communist Party of South Africa gatherings, and the 1922 miners' strike were some of the early events on Market Square. Later, the ANC Youth League, workers' unions and women's organizations would stage various political protests on the City Hall steps. The 1980s saw the UDF and civic organizations put the pressure on an increasingly isolated national party, and still the City Hall steps were at the heart of Joburg protest action. The explosive political situation found apt expression when a bomb went off on the steps in 1988, causing extensive damage to the facade of the building, but no serious injuries. It was clear that apartheid's days were numbered.
Never and never again shall it be.
1994. The first democratic elections with City Hall as one of the voting stations, and the ANC comes to power. A new beginning for South Africa and the beginning of a new era for the Johannesburg City Hall. Soon after the elections, it was announced that the Gauteng provincial government would move from Pretoria to Johannesburg and that the Gauteng provincial legislature would be housed in the Johannesburg City Hall. However, it would take more than a year to do the renovations necessary to accommodate the legislature. On the 21st of October 1995, the City Hall was officially opened as the new seat of the Gauteng legislature. At last, the grand old City Hall could come into its own as a building for the people and a home for a young democracy. Gauteng, or Place of Gold, has its economic and historical roots in the thriving gold industry that was sparked by the discovery of gold in Johannesburg in 1886. Today, it is the economic heartland of South Africa and is characterized by rapid growth and development and a huge influx of people in search of a better life. The 9 million residents of Gauteng have high expectations of government to bring about this better life through effective government and service delivery. And as the body that oversees what the provincial government does, the Gauteng legislature has to ensure that government is efficient and ethical and instill public confidence in government's ability to deliver. Provincial legislatures are a product of the constitutional negotiations that gave shape to the 1996 Constitution. They are autonomous institutions, empowered to make laws, oversee the provincial governments, and ensure public participation in provincial government processes. The members of the provincial legislatures are elected according to a system of proportional representation. So the party with the majority of votes will have the majority of members in the legislature. The first function of the provincial legislature is to make laws for the province. The Constitution says that provinces must be able to make their own laws because each province is different and may have its own needs. The laws that the provincial legislature can make are defined in the Constitution. Any law that a provincial legislature makes only applies in that province. As lawmakers, the members of the legislature have to consider any bill placed before them by the provincial executive, that is, the Premier and the MECs. They go through the bill carefully to make sure that it is relevant, clear, practical, and in line with the Constitution. They also take submissions from the public on the bill into account. Individual members of the legislature can initiate legislation, as can any of the legislature's portfolio committees. Once a bill has been thoroughly discussed and debated by the legislature, it goes to the vote. If the majority of the legislature votes in favor of the bill, it is passed and becomes an act. Sometimes the legislature will discuss an existing act, and if the majority of members vote for changes, the act will be amended. Once an act has been passed by the legislature, it becomes enforceable law. When the legislature has passed a new law or amended an existing law, this has to be communicated to the public. It is also published in the Government Gazette. Besides making laws, the Gauteng legislature is also mandated to oversee the Premier and the MECs, who make up the Provincial Executive Council. This means that the legislature has to check whether the executive is using its power and authority responsibly and in the best interests of the citizens of Gauteng. The Constitution states that the members of the Provincial Executive Council are responsible for the functions assigned to them by the Premier. They are accountable to the provincial legislature for the exercise of their powers and the performance of their functions. They must provide the legislature with regular and full reports on the matters that they are responsible for. The legislature also has to oversee the Gauteng provincial administration. They have to make sure that the officials in each government department are doing their jobs. The smooth running of the province in all matters ranging from roads to libraries to ambulance services is largely dependent on how well these officials are performing. There are a number of ways in which the Gauteng legislature exercises its oversight over the executive and the administration. The members of the legislature can debate bills, budgets and statements and speeches by the MECs, either in portfolio committee meetings or in plenary sessions of the legislature. The portfolio committees have the power to summon MECs and departmental officials to answer questions. The MECs know that they must be prepared to answer very hard questions on how they are delivering a better life to the people of Gauteng. The portfolio committees can also undertake investigations into departmental activities. In most instances, these debates and investigations will be open to public scrutiny. The Gauteng legislature is constantly creating opportunities for Gauteng citizens to participate in lawmaking and oversight processes. It is a constitutional requirement that the provincial legislatures facilitate public involvement in legislative processes, and this is an obligation that the Gauteng legislature has vigorously embraced. Public participation in Gauteng legislative processes takes on various forms. For instance, committees of the legislature hold regular meetings with civil society organizations to share views on legislative and service delivery matters. This helps the members of the legislature to understand the problems and challenges people on the ground are facing. It often happens that individuals approach the legislature seeking answers to policy and service delivery matters. Such individuals are encouraged to put the issue in writing, and it is then channeled to the appropriate committee of the legislature. Public hearings are an important component of the lawmaking process. A public hearing is convened for every single bill under discussion in the legislature so that the view of Gauteng residents can be incorporated into the legislation. The Gauteng Legislature Public Participation Office receives and processes petitions from organizations and members of the public. It also organizes information and training about the budget, legislative processes, and how to participate in the legislature through lobbying, petitions, and submissions. This office runs a number of programs that are designed to foster participation and create awareness of the legislature, a public education program, community outreach programs, and public awareness campaigns and workshops. Through these programs, the legislature is determined to empower sectors of society that might otherwise be marginalized, like stokvels, religious groups, and community-based organizations. Public participation workshops reach about 7,000 people a year. Public awareness workshops are aimed at informing members of the public about proposed bills and how they can input or make submissions. These workshops are also used by committees to get feedback from members of the public on issues such as health, education, housing, and environmental issues. The Budget Process Training Program looks at the Gauteng provincial budget, how it is determined, how it affects ordinary people, and how citizens can influence the impact of the budget. Public participation is all about strengthening democracy. It is about empowering citizens by arming them with information so that they can take an active part in shaping their future and that of their communities. By involving its citizens in the legislative process of the province, the Gauteng Legislature is building a province in which government is based on the will of the people, a South Africa that truly belongs to all that live in it. In the decades to come, the Johannesburg City Hall will undoubtedly continue to play a significant role in the life of the Gauteng province. But where civic action in the past was restricted to the steps of the building, it is now what gives life to the building, inside and out. City Hall is a fitting symbol of civic authority and popular democracy. The Gauteng Legislature has found an appropriate home for the years ahead, as it makes every effort to create a better life for all who call this province home.